Cam, Jansen, and the Chocolate Fudge Mystery, Chapter 5. Cam quickly went next door. She found a spot in the miller's yard where she could see between the hedge and the fence. She sat on the grass and watched the back of the yellow house. "Why is she so sure that something is hiding here?" Mr. Jansen asked Eric. Eric shrugged his shoulders and shook his head. He didn't know. "And where did she go?" Eric shook his head again. Eric and Mr. Jansen walked ahead toward the miller's house. Then Mr. Jansen saw Cam sitting in the miller's backyard. "She can't do that. She shouldn't be sitting on someone else's lawn," Mr. Jansen said. "We know the people who live here," Eric said. "They bought candy and rice cakes from us. We can ask them if Cam can stay there." Mr. Jansen stood behind Eric as he rang the doorbell of the miller's house. Mrs. Miller came out wearing the same long, frilly apron. "Hello again," she said. "The chocolate fudge bar is delicious." "The rice cakes are good too," Eric said. Mr. Jansen stepped forward. "My daughter is Jennifer Jansen, the pretty girl with red hair and freckles who came to your house earlier. She's sitting in your yard right now and watching the yellow house next door. If you don't want her there, I'll tell her to leave." "She thinks someone is hiding in there," Eric added. "She does? Oh, my goodness, I must tell Jacob." Mrs. Miller came back a moment later with her husband. "The Pells live next door," Mr. Miller said, "but they're on vacation. They won't be back for several weeks." "Someone left a box of food on the back porch," Eric said. "Cam is watching to see if anyone will come out and get it." "Who is Cam?" Mrs. Miller asked. "Jennifer's nickname is Cam," Mr. Jansen explained. "It's short for the camera. We call her that because she has a photographic memory." "Oh, well, your camera daughter might be right," Mrs. Miller said. "The Pell's nephew may be in the house. I've never met him, but I know he's a writer. Mrs. Pell has told me that he has trouble finding a quiet place to work." "Let's go outside and see if Jennifer has seen anyone," Mr. Miller said. Mr. Jansen and Eric waited while Mrs. Miller took off her apron and hung it in the closet. She put on a straw hat with a wide brim. They all walked back to the courtyard. Eric sat on the grass next to Cam. The Millers and Mr. Jansen stood next to them. Mr. Jansen asked Cam, "What makes you so sure there's someone hiding in there?" I'm sorry that there's lots of meows in the background of my reading. Clara the cat is kind of going a little bit crazy, so she really wants to get outside, but I'm making her stay inside. So that's what the meowing is. Sorry, back to reading. "It's the newspapers on the front lawn," Cam said. "The newspapers," her father said. "That's a sure sign that no one is in the house." "I smell something," Mrs. Miller said. "Shh," Eric said. "I hear something." Mr. Jansen and the Millers bent down so they were hidden by the hedges. They were quiet. They didn't see anyone, but they heard something or someone moving. Tinkle, meow! The black and white cat jumped onto the back porch again. With its paws and mouth, it tried to open the cardboard carton of milk. Mr. Jansen and the Millers stood up. "Eric and I each looked at a newspaper," Cam said, "and both papers had the same headline. Whoever is hiding in that house probably bought a bunch of papers the day he went into hiding, rolled them up, and threw them on the lawn so people would think the house was empty." Eric said, "The woman with the dark glasses may have thrown the papers there." The cat pulled the milk carton to the edge of the steps and stepped away. The carton fell down the steps and tore open. The cat began to lick up the spilled milk. Suddenly the cat stopped. It looked up. Its legs were bent. The cat was ready to run. "It heard something," Mr. Jansen whispered. He and the Millers bent down. There was a creaking sound. Then the back door of the yellow house opened. Oh no, so scary. Woo, what's happening? Okay, time for some quiz questions. Why did Mr. Jansen go over to the Miller's house? A, just to say hi to his neighbors. B, to ask if it's okay that Cam sits in their yard. Or C, to convince them to yell at Cam and make her come home. If you said the answer is B, to ask if it's okay that Cam sits in their yard, you got it right. Number 2, Mr. and Mrs. Miller really liked the treats they bought from Cam and Eric. A, true, B, false. That one is A, true. They loved those treats. They couldn't get enough. Number 3, where is the Pell family who lives in the yellow house? A, on vacation for a few weeks, B, they moved away, or C, they are inside the house. If you said A, they're on vacation for a few weeks, you're right. Veronica, did you get it right? Hey. I think she got it wrong. Number 4, Mrs. Miller thinks the Pell's nephew might be inside the house because he's a writer and he has a hard time finding a quiet place to work. A, true, B, false. Also, dude, me too. The answer is A, true. He does need a quiet place to work, so she thinks maybe he's in there. Number 5, what does Mrs. Miller put on before going outside? A, a straw hat, B, sunglasses, or C, flip-flops. The answer is A, a straw hat, because she wanted to be protected from the sun. Really quickly, we need to take a break because I need to show you some bloopers. It's a little bit of, well, you'll see. What? How's are you trying to read Camp Jansen? Oh, oh. Oh, yeah. Hubs, you love to read. Oh, he loves to read. Don't tell my mom because we get in big trouble if he goes on the couch. Number 6, what weird detail does Cam notice about the newspapers on the front porch of the yellow house? A, the newspapers are from 5 years ago. B, the newspapers are all from the same day. Or C, the newspapers are written in Spanish. The answer is B, all the newspapers are from the same day. Number 7, Cam thinks someone bought a bunch of newspapers and put them on the porch to make it look like the house is empty. A, true, or B, false? The answer is A, true. She really thinks someone's trying to trick them. Number 8, what happened to the carton of milk? A, it just sat there. B, it got really yucky because it was sitting in the sun. Or C, the cat knocked it over and started drinking it. The answer is C, the cat knocked it over and started drinking the milk. Number 9, while everyone is watching, no one comes out of the house. A, true, B, false. For this one, it's B, false, but it's tricky because they didn't see anybody come out of the house until the very, very, very end. They saw and heard the door opening. So they almost didn't see anybody, but then at the very end, they could tell that somebody's about to come out. So this one is false. Number 10, which of these people is not watching the yellow house from the Miller's yard? A, Cam, B, Eric, or C, Mrs. Jansen? The answer is C, Mrs. Jansen. And the way we can tell that is because we know that Cam's there and she's talking, and we know that Eric's there and he's talking, but we never hear from Mrs. Jansen. We do hear from Mrs. Miller, but not Mrs. Jansen. So that one's pretty tricky. All right, great work. Love it. And yeah, we'll keep going with chapter 6. Bye.